Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and no one really wants the rare stuff. What I'm starting to realize, especially in 2025, as I go about looking for games and really looking to trade games, I'm starting to notice a trend and a difference between retro game collectors and retro video game resellers. And it's honestly impacting the types of games that you're able to see in the wild, um, and how you're able to purchase certain games. What am I talking about? So, a lot of times when we think about very rare and expensive games, we think that these are games that are highly sought after, that these are games that everyone really wants, and that these are games that everyone is really looking for. And in 2025, I honestly do not think that's the case all the time. I think that for certain rare games, the market for them is really small. And I think honestly, for certain like rare games, I don't even think that some of these games are popping up on resellers' radars. I think in 2025, most resellers would rather have a bunch of common games. Like, for instance, they would rather have $700 worth of common games than have a copy of Rule of Rose, because most resellers understand that it's going to be a lot more challenging for them to find a buyer for Rule of Rose than it will be for them to find someone who's willing to buy $700 worth of maybe Pokemon games, or I don't know, like common Nintendo games or GameCube games. And because of this, I'm starting to see a little bit of a shift when trying to negotiate trade deals. What I notice is that resellers are a lot more willing to discount the price that they may have for like a Burning Rangers or like a Last Resort. They're more willing to discount those prices if you're willing to trade them games that will sell a lot faster for them. And it's creating a interesting dynamic, especially when you're trying to trade for games as opposed to straight up buying games cash. Now, even when it comes to buying games cash, I'm seeing that a lot of resellers, they'll advertise their rare and expensive games at market price, right? They'll post their copy of Rule of Rose for $700 or $725. But if you get with them in a private chat, 9 times out of 10, they're willing to knock off $100 or even $150 just to get Rule of Rose out of their inventory, depending on how much they paid for it. And I think this is really interesting because collectors view it a little bit different. As a collector, if you see a very rare or even expensive game, you're not looking at it through the lens of a reseller, because you're not buying it thinking about how fast you'll be able to turn around and sell it. You're buying it thinking, wow, this is a great piece to add to my collection. You're thinking about being able to play the game if it's a game that you've always wanted to play. You're thinking about all the things that collectors think about. And I think, this is a big part of the reason why the way people are starting to view rare video games, especially retro games, is starting to shift. And I'm not saying that these games aren't coveted. I'm not saying that they're games that they're not games that people really want, but I feel like they're becoming less coveted in general, right? If you offer a reseller Giga Wing 2 for trade, they'd probably rather you offer them a bunch of like Mario Wii games. And I'm just speaking based off of what I've been experiencing as I go about negotiating deals both at mom and pop shops and online. Now, there are certain really rare and expensive games that I think still attract the eyes of both collectors and resellers. And we really know what those games are, right? Those are going to be the really popular games, the games that everybody wants and everybody is willing to pay up for. See, not everybody's willing to pay up for Giga Wing 2 because not a lot of people even really still have a Dreamcast, right? Like, people aren't really still even playing Dreamcast or collecting for the Dreamcast like that. So they may not be willing to pay the price for a Giga Wing 2. There's definitely not a lot of people who have a Neo Geo AES, right? So the market for a game like Last Resort is really small. So these two games would be like a nightmare for most resellers because they know that these games are going to sit. They'd have to heavily discount them for a collector to buy them because no average gamer is just going to come in and buy these games. Same thing with Burning Rangers. Not very many people even have or play their Sega Saturn outside of the retro game collecting community. Now, Rule of Rose is a little bit different because there's probably a lot more people that still have a PlayStation 2. But still, the price tag on this game is just way too high. Most people are not going to pay that price. But then you have a game like Silent Hill Shattered Memories. And even though Silent Hill Shattered Memories is a $350 to maybe $380 game, because of the lore behind this game, because of the popularity, because there's still because it's even just that it's on the PlayStation 2 and a lot of people are still playing PlayStation 2, there's probably going to be a lot more people that are willing to pay for Silent Hill Shattered Memories than they will be willing to pay for a copy of Giga Wing 2. On top of that, more resellers will probably want a copy of Silent Hill Shattered Memories versus Giga Wing 2 because they know that this game will sell a lot faster. It's a similar story with a lot of the really expensive GameCube games like Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. This is a very popular, coveted game for collectors, and this is a more widely recognized and more widely accepted game. So a game like Fire Emblem Path of Radiance is going to capture the eyes of both resellers and collectors. Similar story with Pokemon Gale of Darkness. Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. Another one of those games that it's Pokemon, right? So, everything and anything Pokemon is just going to grab the attention of everyone everywhere because that's just the Pokemon effect, right? There's like a Pokemon tax that you got to pay on Pokemon games. And so I think that this is very interesting, and it's going to create a very interesting dynamic, I think, for collectors this spring and summer who are looking to add some more of these rare and expensive titles to their collection. I personally don't think that any collector should be paying, I wouldn't pay market price. And by market price, I mean, I wouldn't pay 2023 or 2024 prices for some of these more rare games in 2025. I wouldn't. In 2025, I don't think anyone should pay $700 for Rule of Rose. I think the most you should be paying for Rule of Rose now this year, in 2025, might be 600, maybe 650. And I think if you can get it for even lower, I would negotiate it down. The reason why I'm saying that is because while, yes, a lot of these prices are being propped up, on price charting and stuff like that, the reality is that most people aren't willing to pay the prices for these retro games. And resellers know that. That's why a lot of them don't want these really rare games in their inventory. They know they're going to have a hard time selling them. And the velocity of sales for resellers is just as important as how much they're getting for the game. They want to sell their games fast. They don't want to sit on games. And these games will sit on a shelf. These games in most retro game stores, they sit. And the only time a lot of these games really sell is when a mom and pop shop is doing like a Thanksgiving Day sale where they're offering 30% off, or, buy two, get one, or something crazy like that, or if it's a yard sale. Those are really the only times that you see games like this move, because even for collectors, unless the game is in 10 out of 10 super mint condition, it's a game that you've really been looking for and you really want to have, only then will some collectors be willing to pay the premium for some of these games. But I think that in large part, the pool of buyers that are willing to pay market price for a lot of these games has shrunk. I might be wrong though. I'm just going off of what I've seen in my local area and my negotiation. You guys let me know what you think. Do you think that really rare games are still being sought after crazy like that? Or do you think the interest has declined just due to people not wanting to pay the price? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.